In the Impact segment tonight, very entertaining exchange yesterday at the White House between Fox News Channel's Ed Henry and Obama spokesman Jay Carney.
Yesterday, you and the president talked about how never in the history of America has the debt ceiling been used to extort a president. Probably saw the Washington Post looked at that, looked at the facts, and gave you 4 Pinocchios. So you're going to correct that today? Or?
There is no question that prior to 2011, there has never been a case where one party with one ideological agenda has threatened to default on the United States obligations for the first time in the history.
Post give you 4 Pinocchios. Or just
you can ask the Washington Post.
Continue to say this has never happened before.
Ed, why don't we look at what Republicans have said? Threatening default is a bad idea.
You still haven't answered that. Washington Post says.
Does anybody else want to watch Ed and me debate?
Joining us from the White House is Ed Henry. Now, the Pinocchios is that, I guess, 4